Going forward, Dr. Sujatha Narayan is the Senior Vice President, Region Leader, India Region, Wabtec Corporation. May I have her AV, please?
Dr. Sujatha Narayan is the Senior Vice President and Regional Leader for Wabtec Corporation in India. As Regional Leader, Sujatha is responsible for the India region, which includes India, Sri Lanka and Bangladesh. In her close to 4 years as Managing Director of Transit Business in India, she has led the company through a period of unprecedented profitable growth with a passionate focus on customer satisfaction, operational efficiency, compliance and employee satisfaction. Sujatha and her leadership team was awarded the Move and Improve the World Team of the Year Leadership Award at the Wabtec Global Strategy Summit for Performance in 2021. In January 2021, Sujatha was featured among the Icons of India Inc., the Star List 2021, and recognized among the top 50 CXOs in the Indian manufacturing industry. Dr. Narayan holds a Master's and PhD in Polymer Science and Engineering from Georgia Institute of Technology, USA, and a BTech degree from the Indian Institute of Technology, New Delhi. She originally hails from Chennai, India.
Great. May I invite Dr. Sujatha to deliver the keynote now?
Thank you. Good evening. I'm a Madras girl, you just heard that. I was born in Andhra Mahila Sabha in Chennai. I grew up in the IIT Madras campus and I studied at Kendra Vidyalaya IIT Madras. So it's a really honor and a delight for me to come to Chennai. Every time I'm invited, I don't miss the opportunity. But I want to take this opportunity to thank the Madras Management Association for inviting me to speak to you and share a few words. It is really a pleasure to be sharing the dais with the dignitaries that we see here, and I'm really looking forward to all the talks today. But we have a problem. I don't have an MBA. And I don't know what I'm going to talk for 15 to 20 minutes on managerial excellence without an MBA. And I don't know if the organizers know that I don't have an MBA. So I apologize if I'm not sharing great theories. But what I do plan to do today is really share with you some thoughts which is intuitive and experiential in what it takes to lead a company successfully in India. I hope that's okay? Yes. Okay, great. So I'd like to start by rewinding to December of 2016. At that point, I was running a business which was a part of 3M, which was a business that sold graphics and cleaning materials and architectural materials to a very wide segment of customers, all banks and institutional owners, etc. I got a call from this company called Fevle Transport. They had just been bought by a company called Wabtec Corporation, one of the world's oldest railway companies, building components for trains and locomotives. It was a managing director job, so I said, hey, that sounds interesting, and let me go and attend the interview. And in the interview, I was asked by the hiring manager, you've got a great track record with 3M, but how will you fit? How will you be a managing director for a company in railways? If you look at the railways industry today, almost everybody is a mechanical or an electrical engineer. I have a PhD in polymer science, and all my work so far was with polymers and chemicals. I don't think it's got a single large CEO who's a woman. I'm a woman. And I have no railways background. So while he liked me very much, he asked me the question, how do you think you could lead a company, which at that time was about $100 million, with about 1,800 employees, and how do you think you can do that? And I gave it a lot of thought, and my answer is what I'm going to talk about today, elaborating a little bit more than I did in my interview. I see a lot of very senior CEOs and managing directors in the audience, maybe some aspiring ones, and I also see some students. So hopefully some of these thoughts will be valuable to you, and maybe during the evening dinner we can share and discuss that some more. But my response to him was that I think when you get to a certain level in an organization, when you talk about leading a company holistically, Really, it's focused around what I would call 3 pillars. The first is the setting of the strategy. The second is to ensure the execution excellence of the strategy of the day-to-day business. And third, to take care of the people. So essentially, I felt that a CEO, a leader, a business unit leader's job is to set the strategy, to ensure execution, and to take care of the people. So I'm going to spend the next 5 to 10 minutes just sharing my thoughts on each of these. So when we talk about setting the strategy, I think when it comes to a business leader, whether it's a CEO or an MD or a general manager, it is the singular responsibility of the leader to do it. This is one space that has absolutely no room for delegation. Your managers who run the day-to-day activity of the business do not have the time. They are delivering the numbers, they're delivering the customer satisfaction that you need to generate the financials for you to exist as a company that makes profits. You have the luxury of having the helicopter view of the entire business, the industry, the customer, and looking into the future and building the strategy. Now, what does this need? And as I became a new MD, what I really practiced, which worked out really well, is I kept my mouth shut for at least 2 months. I spent it all learning. I learned from everybody that I could, especially the people who reported to me and the people who reported to them. So humility to me is really one of the most basic competencies that a strong leader has. It is extremely critical to spend the initial months and then every day, even if you've been a CEO of a company for 10 years, the kind of VUCA world that we live in, learning is really key. And you have to understand your business, your industry, your customers, what they need, what is your value proposition in the industry, etc. And you have to understand what is happening with the industry, and you have to have the intelligence to explain and understand what is happening to the future of this industry, and that's how you build a strategy. My recommendation, spend tons of time with your customers and your salespeople. Both of them talk a lot. And so you will have a lot of learning from there. And many people make the mistake of spending a lot of time inside the company. And what worked for me is I visited every single customer along with my sales team. And sales team from different levels of the organization, so you get a very holistic perspective. Spend time with your engineers. They are the ones who really understand your technology and your products. Spend time with the old-timers. They will tell you about failed experiments, so you can save time not trying those again, and experiments that could potentially succeed. And then once you build this strategy, communicate, communicate, communicate. I think this is one thing that a lot of leaders keep close to their chest, but I think it's extremely important to communicate the strategy of the organization to all the employees. Not only does that drive performance and buy-in, but it also increases employee engagement and motivation for them to stay with the company and drive their performance. An example I will give you around this is a $1 billion vision that we have created for Wabtec in India, which is about $500 million today, hoping to become $1 billion in 3 to 5 years. You never want to give a specific time. But once we've built the strategy and how we get there, every single town hall that I conduct, every meeting that I go to, I talk about the $1 billion plan. And today I can bet that you go and talk to any Wabtec India employee and you ask them what's the future of Wabtec, they will mention the $1 billion plan. And that's what they're rallying around, and I see a tremendous amount of buy-in from the organization. Moving away from the strategy, a few thoughts on execution. Now, of course, your job as a leader, as a CEO, an MD, a business unit leader, a general manager, is to ensure execution excellence. Now, if you are in the midst of this execution, then I believe something's wrong with your organization. Because as the leader of the organization, you don't want to be in the day-to-day execution. And this is, people believe in different ways of running a business. This is my personal philosophy. So it's all about building a really strong team. And that's where I've spent a lot of my time in the last 5 years and has led to great success. One of the principles that I use for driving execution excellence in the company, personally for me, is the principle of managing by gaps. I spent a lot of time creating a landscape of how every department was operating, how their leaders are, how their teams are. I put them in red, yellow, green buckets. I left the green ones alone. They knew what they were doing. They were delivering results. They were doing the right things, and I didn't spend time with them. When it came to the yellow, these were people who were progressing. They got some attention. And the departments that showed real gaps, and there have been things like that, when I joined the company, is where I spent most of my time. Now, this can be very different from what other people believe, because there is also a thought that you want to address your Pareto. Your largest, most profitable businesses should get most of your attention. That is really not how I operate, because I don't believe in micromanaging or rocking the boat of things that are already going well. So a great example I have here, and Kadir is here from Deloitte, but when I joined Favele Transport, which is a Wabtec company, I went in and I realized that I kept getting escalations from the team, from the customers, from employees about our manufacturing. Now, they kept saying, we're not able to deliver to customers' requirement. Our customer on-time delivery was very low. We had employees leaving because they could not take the customer pressure. When we looked into this, the problem was very clear. You had a market which had a very high demand. This is India. We're excited about how fast it grows. And then you had suppliers. These are smaller companies that were not as organized as we would like them to. And you did not have a great supply chain planning process. This is when I brought in Deloitte, and I had incredible support with them, and we ran a huge supply chain transformation program. And this set the stage for the company, doubling in sales and many, many, many times in profitability. So this was the keystone of my success. And one of the learnings that I have, we often hear, and no offense to Deloitte, but we often hear that consultants just come and tell you what to do and charge you a lot of money, and they make pretty PowerPoints. I can tell you personally from my experience that you work with the right consultant. It's not only Deloitte, but in different areas, even in the pieces of customer centricity and reliability, and even in our operations, we have brought in subject matter experts, external experts to come in, because you cannot have every single expertise within your company. The second example I'd like to give you, and I just referred to that, is customer centricity. So we actually brought in an external company, and we drove customer centricity with an obsession, right? Every meeting, we talked about customers all the time. And why did we do this? Because my observation was that people were working for the P&L. So it was all about delivering sales, delivering profits. They were working for their global bosses. But not a single person was talking about what the customer needs. And I had to really reprogram their DNA for them to understand that the reason they have a paycheck is because they have a customer who's willing to pay for their products. So we ran this thematically, and so every year in the last 5 years, we would pick a theme which was a gap in the organization, and we would run it holistically. Now, at this point, people may ask, if you're focused around managing by gaps, then what about the large pieces that are working well? How do you make sure that they don't tank? So that's where governance comes in, and I use the Hoshin Kanri methodology, but there are a number of techniques by which you can monitor the performance of the business to ensure that things don't go wrong. So in summary, on the execution piece, spend a large portion of my time and my leadership time focusing on fixing the gaps that we have, but ensuring that other parts of the businesses don't break through a very strong governance process. Lastly, when it comes to family, when it comes to people in your organization, and I said family because my note here was that I don't know if it's because I'm a woman or by nature. Every time I have a job, I feel like my team is my family. And I'm not trying to, I don't mean to make it sound tacky, but it is the way I operate. Now, that doesn't mean you're going to protect them at any cost, right? Taking care of performance issues is just like you take care of a kid, of your child that is not performing well in school by addressing, giving resources, helping them, you do it. But one of my observations, and this is not just in India, not in the companies I work, but across the world, even the fundamentals are really not in place. While You've got companies like GE and 3M who pride themselves in their human resources processes. But fundamentals of clarity of roles and responsibility, setting of objectives in the beginning of the year, these objectives and goals being SMART, which is specific, measurable, actionable, responsible, time-bound, periodic review processes, career development discussions, strong rewards and recognition, strong employment engagement activity. These are all really basics for most companies, but it's not really being done. And it is not being done by the people who should do it, which is not the top leadership, but every people manager in the company. And that is where the lacuna is, and one has to spend an extraordinary amount of time systematizing this in the organization so that this process is well in place. Communication, I already spoke about before. It's been a big part of how we've driven success. Communicating good news and bad ones. When we have a bad quarter, when we've lost an order, we talk about it openly so that the organization and every single employee understands what are the challenges and what their role can be. And I often hear how inspiring it is for them, not only to be part of the success, but to listen about the failures and resolve within oneself on how we can turn it into a success the next time. The other common issue that many of us business leaders face is this whole department politics. And we heard a little bit about politics earlier as well today. How do you address that? There's a fantastic book by Patrick Lencioni called Silos, Turfs, and something like that. And the way I address it is to drive all our initiatives cross-functionally. I actually try to implement a policy where there are no public awards for individuals and only teams and only cross-functional teams. This really drives a lot of cross-functional synergy, and people stop talking about stop blaming each other, right? Finance saying sales is not getting the right price. Sales is saying the engineers are not developing the right product. You know, we all face this every day. But if everything that you do in the company is cross-functional, and this is a little bit of a management philosophy that's developing in the new age companies where they don't have departments, they just have these groups of skills that are working on various projects. But this works like a charm, actually, if you don't create individual heroes or departments that are high-performance departments, but just focus on cross-functional work. The other concept that I'm experimenting with is a concept of leadership pyramid. So one of the mistakes, when we're a small company, the managing director, the proprietor can really call all the shots, run the company. But as you begin to scale and you get larger, you need more and more of your leadership involved in running the company. So the first experiment I did was when I was the managing director of Faiveley Transport. I had my direct reports as the operating council, and then I created a layer of another 40 leaders called the senior leadership team. And I talked about the themes of customer centricity and reliability and competitiveness, and these leaders ran projects to drive these themes. Now I've taken it to 3 levels, because now that I'm running all of Wabtec in India and we're a larger organization. So what we're trying to do is to pull more and more of our leaders and our employees into the execution of our $1 billion plan. So I'll finish off, and I'm sorry if I've taken too long, but I'll finish off by giving you the example of this $1 billion journey that we've created at Wabtec. In 2019, I was in the US talking to our CEO, and he said, Sujatha, you're a $500 million company. What stops you from being a $1 billion company in 5 years? Now, that's a big goal. It's a scary goal. But I said, why not? I'm in the largest rail transportation market in the world. I'm in the fastest growing rail transportation in the world. This is a company that has invested in India very significantly for the last 2 decades, and I have 3 million square feet of operational footprint, close to 3,000 employees. Why can't I do it, right? So that it started with that. Now we built the strategy of how we'll get there. We said we're going to leverage the 3 pillars. One is the large and growing market. The second is the low operational costs. And the third is the high engineering talent. We presented this to our investors at the Global Investor Meet, got buy-in from the board, came back to India, pulled in this leadership pyramid I was talking to you about, the regional leadership team, the regional councils, the India Leaders Club. So 110 people sat together and tried to figure out how are we going to move from $500 million to $1 billion. Out of that came 14 work streams, each of these work streams driven by our leaders and cross-functional team. And only 2 weeks ago, I went back and presented to our global, and we had a little bit of a delay because of the 2 years of COVID, went back and presented to our global community on how we will get there, the nitty-gritties of how we move from $500 million to $1 billion. And this didn't come from me. All I did was to set a vision and get people excited about it. But the leaders together, the team came up with the ideas on how to get there. We presented it. It was received so well. I'm going back in a week to present it to the board of the company. So with that, I'll stop. I really enjoy talking about the journey at Wabtec. For me, being a non-MBA CEO, it's all learning on the job. And I enjoy learning and experimenting with different concepts. I've shared some of that with you. I hope you found it useful. Looking forward to discussing more. And thank you again so much for the opportunity.